Hello everyone, my name is Karol Marek Klimczak. I'm a professor at Lodz University of Technology, and today I'd like to show you how to work with literature in economics and management. Now the first thing you'll need is to have access to online resources from your university. In our case is the OpenVPN for students. You got a link there on the left, and you can also access through the library through this access link. Now the library has a specific site for online resources that you might find useful. Of course, you will ask, why not just use Google? So why do I have to go to all those difficulties? Well, there's a few answers to that. First, there's just too many academic papers out there. It's a sea. Now you don't want to waste your time reading irrelevant papers. You want to focus on papers that others also discuss, which means others also cite those papers. So don't use Google unless you know exactly what you're looking for, and the same goes for Google Scholar. You can also use reference managers for organizing your references, so like Zotero or Mendeley or something else, but your problem typically is not the number of references you're using. The main thing you'll need is how to format the references in a given format accepted for the essay. But that you can do, for example, with Crossref. So don't use it unless you feel like it. Check it out, of course, if you like. I think nothing beats printing out a paper and just scribbling all over it to make sure you understand it. Now, the rule of thumb for a good paper is use 3-5 key references. Now, those references should be well cited. You should know them. You should have read them in a lot of detail and discussed them. Okay, so 3 to 5. Why 3? Because it's a magic number, and 5 because you have 5 fingers. It's a good rule. Now, if you need, of course, you can sprinkle your paper with additional references, especially if they're accurate, technical, they fit exactly what you want to say, and add salt and pepper to taste if you like. Now we are going to start with ScienceDirect, and I chose a topic for today, just as an example, workforce polarization. So I typed in workforce polarization, I got results such as optical TM, TE mode conversion contribution to the radiation force, which makes absolutely no sense. Now, the reason why this is happening is that I actually typed it wrong. I should have typed workforce as one word. And when I do that, I'm getting much more useful references, such as work organization and job polarization, which actually tells me I should have asked for job polarization. Now, we will limit our focus here on the most recent years and just look at some of the top cited or top referenced articles. Now, some of those may be just a bit too narrow and too technical. So like this one has a nice title, but actually it's a very economic paper using an economic model. Maybe just not exactly what you're looking for. You might find difficulty understanding it. Now this one looks good. It says the march of the techies, job polarization within and between firms. And if you read the abstract, it's quite clear. Now it's been cited once, so that's, well, not a lot, but maybe it makes sense. But the data in that article, if you check it out, is a bit old. I mean, maybe it makes a lot of sense to use the data. I don't know. I haven't read the whole thing. But data from 1994 to 2007, yeah, that's not maybe what I was looking for. But maybe it's a good paper. It's got a nice title. So let's look for the literature section and see what literature they cite. And let's focus on that literature. So we got a recent paper, right? And which looks good. Let's look at the literature that they use. And now the best way to do this is to just check out how many times they reference those papers. Now, some of them are referenced 3 times, like the one from Goose and Manning. But actually, all of the papers by Goose are cited some 13 times. So Goose is an important person here. Now, if you look at Autor et al. 2003, that's cited 12 times. So that seems like an important paper. And at the bottom, you've got Gretz and Michaels, and that's cited only once. So basically, don't look at this unless it's exactly what you're looking for. So here are the details. And we're going to look at those references now in Scopus, so the place where we can check whether others cite. Now let's click on the reference. If you click on it, it'll pop up a window on the right. This one is for Autor et al. and you can then click on View Records in Scopus, or Google Scholar if you like. We're going to look at Scopus. Now, that's an old article, but it's got 1,600 citations. That's a lot. So this tells you it's a really important one. It's probably worth reading. Now let's look at the other one, St. Manning. We again click on View Records in Scopus. And what you see is it's been cited 700 times, which is less, but it's still a lot. And of course, it's a more recent paper, so it's naturally cited less because there's been just less time to cite it. So again, this looks like a pretty important paper. It's got a nice title too. Now you can check out some key authors like Martin Goose and see what they've been working on more recently. Perhaps they're specialists in this field, and so it might be worthwhile following what they did and what they published in many different places. Now, let's look up the more recent articles for the two papers that we found. Okay, so these are seminal papers, old papers. You might want to read them to get background, okay, but they're pretty old, and we might be interested in something with more recent data. So let's look at who cites these papers. So you click on the list of the citations, and then we limit what we see to the last 5 years and our subject areas. Here's what we get. Now, as you see, what Scopus does by default is it shows you the newest articles, which isn't exactly helpful for you because you have no idea which one of those might be more useful, right? I mean, you can just go ahead and read all of them, but if you don't want to do that, it might be better to sort the results by citations to focus on what others read and cite. And this will show you some articles that have been cited 800 times, 200 times, 100 times. So you know somebody read those articles and somebody used them in their research. So that's probably the ones you should be starting with. Something somebody else verified for you. Now, if you look at the titles here, some of them may not be as important as others. For example, the first one sounds pretty good, like the future of employment. How susceptible are jobs to computerization? Okay, that's like exactly what we've been looking for, and that's 2017. That's good, and 800 citations. But the next one says the gender wage gap. So maybe that's not exactly about polarization, not something you would be interested in right now. The third one, growing importance of social skills in the labor market. Well, perhaps if you're thinking about how to structure your career, and so on and so on. So we can decide which papers to follow on from this list. Now, the first one about the future of employment seems a pretty good find, right? It's got 850 citations, and it talks about how they examined different jobs to see how probable it is that they will be computerized. Sounds good. It reads well, as you can understand what they want to say, and you can see clearly what they reference. And they have a nice graph. Now that's good. If somebody uses graphs, that means they have something important to say. Of course, if you're reading economic papers, economists are trained to do tables, so also pay attention to tables like this one on the kinds of characteristics of jobs that affect the probability of being computerized. Now, one thing you should do is, even though an article has been cited many times, perhaps it's not cited anymore. Sometimes an article was refuted or there was some sort of a scandal and nobody cites it. So you might want to check exactly who is citing it, how many times and when. Now this article is cited a lot in different years, including 2021. So obviously this is a good